Ya Hazireen Majlis, Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh. We have been discussing the topic of finding peace in an imperfect world throughout this month of Adha. And continuing with the same topic, today, inshallah, we will talk about the topic of self-esteem. Self-esteem means what do you feel about yourself? What do you think about yourself? And, it's also called self-worth. There's kind of different, but today we'll just use them as one. And the reason for choosing this topic is because, first of all, let's talk about what is self-esteem. So self-esteem, many of us may have heard the word, it simply means how you feel about yourself. What are your, what do you think you're capable of? How do you deal with setbacks, challenges when you face in life, and how that impacts you? Now, we know that the way you think about yourself is extremely important because it's very related to, your mental and emotional well-being. In other words, when you feel good about yourself, when you have what we call high self-worth, then no matter what happens to you, if people are mean to you, if you go through challenges in life, you generally have a good opinion of yourself and you can deal with those challenges in an appropriate way, right? On the other hand, when you don't feel good about yourself, when you have what we call low self-esteem or low self-worth, then life becomes much more challenging, right? So even though, many of us, like, have you ever heard of the term inner critic? How many of us have heard the term inner critic? Do you know what I mean? So let me explain it, right? Anyone say somebody asks you to do something, right? And you want to do it, but you don't feel confident, right? And then a voice inside your head kind of doubts, tells you that you're not capable, you are not good enough, you shouldn't be speaking up, you shouldn't be doing what you really, really want to do. Do you know what I mean? So, we said that the inner critical voice is something that kind of stops us in life. It makes us feel bad about ourselves. And some of the expressions of that are that we try to please people even when we don't want to. Do you know what I mean? We go out of our way, and it's not coming, it's really good, by the way, to do good things for people. And inshallah, we'll talk about that another time. But that's not what I'm talking about. I'm talking about things that we do and then we resent it. You know what I mean? And I think women tend to really excel in this, right? That we do so much for people and then we feel kind of depleted, we feel bad about ourselves, we feel that we're being taken advantage of, right? And that's what I mean by having a low sense of worth, that you don't feel that you are, that you deserve better. Okay. So, like I said, this topic is very, very related to what we call mental and emotional well-being. Okay. And so where does self-esteem or self-respect come from? What psychologists explain to us is that it comes both from external factors and internal factors, right? So what are external factors? Say you were very young and you had a critical parent, or you were very young and you had that teacher in school who told you that you'll never amount to anything, right? That you weren't good enough, that you weren't clever enough. Do you know what I mean? Right? Or you may have a parent who may have told you that. Now, the problem with believing people, right, when they tell you something about yourself is like, just like us, other humans are flawed. You know what I mean? Like they're not perfect. And when people are dealing with us, they're coming from their own sense of self. If somebody's happy with themselves, like when we feel good, we're not likely to be mean to other people. You know what I mean? So when we are, when other people are, for whatever reason, struggling with themselves, they may tell us some things when we were very young that kind of become a part of us. Now, I challenge you, think of something that you think you're not good at. Any examples? Everyone's really good at everything.
Painting.
Painting, okay. And what led you to that decision that you're not good at it?
I see it.
Okay. 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 So here's the thing, very interestingly, I had this story in my head for a long time that I can't draw, I can't paint. I have a lot of those I can't do's, right? And then, because I work with people, I told myself that if a client came to you and said that you're not good at this, what would you tell them? And what I came up with was, who told you? How do you know? What have you tried? Right. So it turns out that people who happen to be good, and I had the same thing, right? I'm not good at painting or drawing for that matter. So it turns out that people who are good at it have worked really hard at it, right? And I actually hadn't. I had never taken a class. I had never really put in the time. In order to be good at anything, you need to be willing to do it badly. Do you know what I mean? Okay. People who are good, like, we heard such, and by the way, in Oakville, you guys are blessed with the most amazing voices. Amazing, right? Can we have a salawat? So chances are they have practiced a lot before getting so good, right? So you have a little bit of raw talent, but a lot of it is hard work. The problem, though, is when we don't feel good about ourselves, is that we don't put in that hard work because we've already made up our mind. We've already told ourselves that we're not good at something, and therefore, the example I always use is that of driving. If I ask people, are you confident at driving? If they've been driving for a number of years, they'll say, yeah. And my question is that, remember when you first started driving, were you this confident? No. If you were really confident when you first started driving, that would be a problem, right? You would be a menace on the street. So it's appropriate that we don't feel good about ourselves when we haven't done something well enough. So the idea is that, when we don't feel good, we actually stop ourselves from taking risks, from doing things that we want to do. Right? So if you want to paint is another thing, right? For some people, it's not a thing and it's okay. But if you want to do something and you're stopping yourself, that is what we call that when, a lack of self-esteem or low self-esteem is getting in the way, okay? Now, why is this so important? So I said that an inner critical voice, right, comes from our childhood generally, or when somebody tells us something about ourselves, okay? And there's a beautiful saying by Rumi who says, you have lost yourself in a losing encounter, distinguishing not the other from your true self. At every shadow, you are quick to exclaim, this is me. In other words, when somebody tells us something about yourself, you are like this. You're not good enough. You're too critical. You're not clean enough. You know what I mean? Anything, okay? This is me. By God, it is not you. Isolate yourself for a while from the crowd and immerse yourself to the neck in thought. Indeed, you shall find you are one with the one. Beautiful, serene, and blessed is yourself. Beautiful, serene, and blessed is yourself. Okay. So another reason why this is such an important topic is that we know that we are going through very turbulent times. Everything around us is in a state of flux. It is in a state of chaos. And there's this beautiful book called The Six Pillars of Self-Esteem. And Nancy Brandon, who wrote it, says, the turbulence of our time demands strong selves with a clear sense of identity, competence, and worth. This is very, very important to us as Muslims. With a breakdown of cultural consensus and absence of worthy role models, please look at politics, and that will give you the answer. Little in the public arena to inspire our allegiance, and very rapid change, a permanent feature of our lives. It is a dangerous moment in history not to know who we are and not to trust ourselves. The stability we cannot find in the world, we must create within our own selves. The stability that we cannot find outside, we must create in ourselves. Okay. So, turning to the Quran, what does Allah tell us about the worth of a human being? Remember what Rumi says, that you cannot find it in people. And what we said was, when we believe other people who are very flawed like us, who are still on the path to progress like us, we will always be misled. So let's turn to the Quran and see what the Creator tells us. What are we worth? So, there's like I chose like 20 ayat and I was still not done. So I'm going to just pick a few today. First of all, a very famous thing that all of us know about is when Allah says, I am creating a being from teen, from mud, from salsal, and then I am breathing into him my spirit. And then what does he say to the angels? Do sajda to this insan, to Nabi Adam alayhi salam, and Iblis refused. We all know the basic story. However, there's a lot, when you look at the depth and beauty of the Quran, let's just go step by step. So he says, and this is from chapter 15, verse 28 and 9. وَإِذْ قَالَ رَبُّكَ لِلْمَلَائِكَةِ. So when God told, so it's an announcement. Right now, he's kind of declaring his intention. It hasn't happened yet. Inni khaliqun bashrum. I am going to create a being, a bashar. Bashar is one word for a human being. And then for iza sawaitahu. So the first thing is I'm going to create something from mud, from teen, from salsal. And then for sawaitahu, I will make him balanced in proportion. I will make him balanced in proportion. And number 3, وَنَفَخْتُ فِيهِ مِنْ رُوحِي. And I would breathe into him my spirit. And after he says that, so 3 parts to the insan, the base part, which by the way, our creation, the fact that it is from earth is common to all creation. This does not make us special, right? Human beings, like animals, like insects, like trees, everything is created from the same matter. So what distinguishes a human being? Part 2, that he has balanced that. He has given us this aql, he has given us the ability, he has given us emotional intelligence. And 3, he has breathed his spirit into us, which means that we are forever connected to him.
Subhanallah.
Forever connected to him. And do you think God is worthy? Right. So how can we as human beings who have the spirit of God think that we are not worthy? Right? When we feel bad about ourselves, we have to go back to this ayah, that he has created us with his breath. This is part of our godliness inside of us. This connection that we have is absolute from the time we were created, way before we were born, forever. Okay. And what that means, we are told in this plane of existence, our job is to adopt and to manifest the akhlaq of Allah, right? We are to manifest within our characters what he is. And how do we do that? We can't really copy or imitate something that we have no connection with. But given that he has breathed unto his spirit, we are kind of pre-programmed. So the raw material is all there. Okay. And so when Iblis says, what does Iblis say? Why does he refuse? He says, "Ana khairum minhu." I am better than him. Why? Because you have created him from teen and you have created me from fire. What is Iblis not seeing? He is only looking at the apparent bashar. He is only looking at the fact that the human being, like every other creature, is created with mud. He does not see that he is balanced perfectly, that he has this ability, and he does not see that he has the spirit of God. Okay. And so after God creates, then he says, then do sajda to him. Now, when you look at sajda in the Quran, it is beautiful. Whenever Allah is saying, there's so many beautiful examples. For example, when the magicians, right, what happened? We know about the magicians, right? When Nabi Musa threw his staff and it became a snake. What did the magicians do? They became overcome because they knew that this was more than the intellects could handle, and they fell down in sajda. Right? So whenever Allah talks about falling down in sajda, it means that you are recognizing an entity that is greater than you. You are recognizing that this is a moment of awe. Awe means khashya of Allah, right? That you are recognizing that this is something far beyond your understanding and your experience. So again, what Iblis is only looking at is one part of the human being, and that is sometimes what we do. And we know that, in the human, because we are created from mud and clay, and we have the Spirit of God. That Surah Teen, it tells us, right, that we can rise to the highest, or we can be asfala safili. That we have this kind of battle within us all the time. What else does Allah tell us in the Quran? He says that inni jailun li khalifa, means I am putting my representative on the earth. When you are a representative of someone, what does that mean? That you are A, connected to them, and B, you follow their orders, you follow their values, right? So that is another thing he tells them. In another verse of the Quran, he said, Karramna Bani Adam. I have honored the son of Adam, right? So that's all of us, by the way, right? He tells us, Laqad khalaqna al-insana fi ahsani taqweem. I have made man in the best of mate. And what hadiths tell us, and what the Quran also tells us, is that what is the basis of creation? What is the basis of making us all of this superior to all other creatures? Is our aql, is our ability to discern, is our faculty of understanding. And so again, a beautiful hadith from Imam Ali alayhi salam. He says, Allah has characterized the angels by aql without desire or anger. Because remember, angels are pure light, right? And animals, including human beings, with anger and desire, sorry, not human beings, but animals with anger and desire without intellect. In other words, they don't have any aql. If the so human beings have both, right? We are created by much, so we have the desires of all creatures, and we have the light of God within us. So if the human being's intelligence dominates his desire and anger, in other words, if our aql overtakes our shahwa, our base desires, then we rise to a station above the angels. Right? And those of you who know Iqbal's words, I'm sure you know this very famous couplet of his, Farishte se behtar hai insan banna, magar isme padti hai mehnat zyada. Right? So we can rise higher than the angels. However, it does require a little bit of work. So again, another very beautiful hadith by Imam Ali alayhi salam. Do you think you are a small entity while within you is unfolded the entire universe? Whereas within you is unfolded the entire universe, okay? And when we look at examples like Imam Hussain alayhi salam, right? So when he tells, and what does that mean? So what does all of this tell you? That the worth of a human being in the eyes of God is a lot. He has created us to excel. He has given us everything that we need to rise up to our full potential, okay? And so basically, we cannot sell ourselves short. We cannot sell ourselves short. And there's a lot and lot of hadiths about, there's a, in Imam Zainul Abidin's Risalatul Huquq. When he says that, he talks about all the organs have a right, people have a right on us. And he says the right of the tongue is that you consider is too noble for obscenities. In other words, this is a gift given to you from God. And again, when we remember that the Spirit of God is within us, that we do not defile ourselves by speaking in a way that does not befit the worth of a human being. Do you understand what I'm saying? And when we look at Imam Hussain alayhi salam, when he tells Yazid that a man like me cannot do bayat of a man like you, right? What does that mean? This is exactly, he recognizes his worth. He recognizes that he is destined for greatness. Everything happened. But remember that the enemies could not take away the self-respect or the self-worth. And again, when we are crying for them and we remember them, we need to keep that in mind, that we never kind of diminish the status of the Masumin by, they were Mazloom in the sense that oppression was done to them, but they never ever lost their dignity. They were not victims of any type or sort, right? We do need to remember that. So, given that the human being is so worthy in God's eyes, what psychologists tell us these days is that we have a crisis of self-esteem. A crisis of self-esteem in the world. What does that mean? In the old days, when psychologists used to work with people who had depression or anxiety or other mental health issues, they usually were accompanied by challenges in life, such as poverty is a huge challenge, right? Poverty, immigration, trauma, war, all of these things you could understand are going to take your resources and they challenge them. What psychologists are finding right now, that there is a newly identified risk group. What does that mean? When people come to therapy, or they usually have everything. They are affluent, a lot of money, a lot of resources, and I'm talking about like youth in particular, right? 14 to 18, 21. And this is what people cannot understand. Psychologists are really struggling to find the answer for this, okay? During COVID, we knew COVID was a very hard time. Do you know that a certain age group, I'm talking about teen girls, and this is why it's very, very important for parents to have this kind of information. The suicide attempts for teen girls went up by 50%, 50. And one of the, what they found was, one of the causes was it was directly related to, of course, isolation, but how much time young girls were spending on social media. And the frequency of Instagram use and body dissatisfaction, drive for thinness, and low self-esteem. These were all really, really connected, okay? So, what went wrong? Again, we need to use our majalis to actually talk about things. I know these are very difficult subjects. Like, believe me, like I have sleepless nights before I have to deliver a talk like this. But the fact is that many of us are being very, very overcome and challenged by these issues. It's in many homes. So again, let's get back to the Quran. Although the Quran talks about self-worth of a human being and says how much he has elevated Karamna Bani Adam, the Quran also keeps guiding the human being not to become too proud or boastful. Okay, again, lots of verses on this, on humility. And one of the words that Allah uses is muhtalan fakhura. Muhtalan fakhura means that self-deluded boaster. That's how it's generally thing in English. In other words, that you are deluded about yourself, about who you are, about your worth, and you have this grand need for showing off, for boasting, for all of this, okay? When I was, reading this, what comes to mind is, and I read a really good book about this as well, it's called The Narcissism Epidemic. The Narcissism Epidemic. Now, I know, what we see on social media generally is women diagnosing their spouses as narcissists. This is the most common thing, okay? That is not what I'm talking about, okay? What I'm talking about, good research, not pop psychology, right? What good research in the field is showing is this, and it is very concerning, that all of us are somewhere on the spectrum of narcissism, number one. And number two, there are very, very obvious reasons why this is happening. And we're actually doing the exact opposite of what we should be doing, okay? So what is narcissism? Narcissism, by the way, it only a term that only came to light like maybe 100 years ago. And it comes from the Greek myth of Narcissus. He was like one of the Greek, guys, exceptionally good looking young man who was so infatuated by himself that he would keep looking at himself in the image in the water, and he fell in love with himself basically, and it was unrequited because he didn't realize it was himself, and he just died pining for himself basically. So very sad story. But what are some of the characteristics that we see in human beings? Okay, that an unreasonably high importance of self, right? Basically, self-absorption and self-focus. And again, why I keep talking about social media is because it gives us a very, very good flavor of what's on people's minds. So what do you see on social media all the time? Don't take nonsense. You deserve better. You are the queen. You are raising, I call it the prince and princess syndrome. We are raising princes and princesses in our homes. Okay, that's a whole different thing. Despite having a seemingly strong personality, narcissists lack a core self. The reason why they have to keep bragging, drawing attention on themselves, because inside they feel empty and there's a lack of self-worth. Okay. Now, how did this happen? So I'm going to read something that is from the book, The Narcissism Epidemic. American culture, and when I say American, North America, the West, basically, focus on self-admiration has caused a flight from reality to the land of grandiose fantasy. We have phony rich people. How do we have phony rich people? Because everyone's living on interest, right? Piles of debt, what I'm saying. Phony beauty with plastic surgery and cosmetic procedures. Phony athletes with performance-enhancing drugs. Phony celebrities via reality TV and YouTube, phony genius students with grade inflation, a phony national economy with $11 trillion of government debt, phony feelings of being special amongst children with parenting and education focused on self-esteem, very interestingly, and phony friends with social networking explosion. All this fantasy might feel good in the moment, but unfortunately, reality always wins. The mortgage meltdown and the resulting financial crisis are just one demonstration of how inflated desires eventually crash to earth. This is not from an Islamic perspective. This is from a secular perspective, okay? So what are the key causes of narcissism? And I'm talking about first about ourselves and our children, including my own, okay? Unconditional positive regard. Child-centered parenting. So here's the thing. How many of us think praising our children is good? Be honest. Okay. And we give them a lot of praise, don't we? Okay, some of us do, right? Some of us think that they are God's gift to humanity. Okay. And they're the most, I'm just what I read on social media, right? The most perfect child that ever was. I also want to know who these children are because mine are not like that, okay? Extrinsic versus intrinsic motivation means yearning for money, fame, and good looks. Three things, I was talking to some parents recently, and they all said, and actually a mother was watching my program with her child on TV, and the child told her, please, mom, why don't you have a YouTube channel? So she said, YouTube channel for what? And the child said, just be famous, right? Have a YouTube channel. And then other mothers started talking. They said, yes, all our children want to be YouTube stars. And I'm for what? And they said, and then I realized that being famous on reality TV is one of the top goals of young people today. And I'm not talking about our children, but just becoming famous was an important goal of this generation. And the very best thing in the world, when children were asked, the most popular answer was being a celebrity, good looks, and being rich. Making God, by the way, the importance of God came in last. Okay. Okay. Here's the thing. If it's working, I always say don't mess with some things that's working. But it's not. It is not. Chasing after these things is actually making our families sick, mentally and emotionally. Okay. Because here's the thing, happiness in the past, right? And happiness even today, if you look for true peace, is a byproduct of doing other things. Making money is a byproduct. But when your entire focus is on making money, on being rich is your goal. So, again, when they used to interview children in the 1950s and 60s, and they asked, why do you want to go to college? Children would say things like to get a good education, to expand my horizons, for self-development, to learn things. Somewhere around the 1990s, it completely changed. So when you look at research on why children want to go to university, like in the 90s, 2000s, now, the number one answer is to get a good job. And why to get a good job? So that we can make more money. So this is what I'm talking about, right? If you are seeking an education for something else, money will be a byproduct, right? It must ensue. But when you pursue the money, it will always make you unhappy. This is what research is showing. And if we don't recognize this, we are literally chasing for happiness and peace in the wrong, not only in the wrong places, but the things that we are doing are actually causing our unhappiness. And this is why this is so, so important to talk about. So again, what do we mean by intrinsic goals? So when children are asked to set goals, or when families are setting goals, right? Again, try to take the focus away from extrinsic goals. I want to look like this. I want to have this. I want to acquire this. I want to buy this handbag. I want to buy this car. No, focus on things intrinsic means I want to develop myself. I want to contribute. And we'll talk about this, inshallah, tomorrow. Contribution is the number one key. It's the key to well-being and happiness. Okay. So meaningful relationships, personal growth, and community contributions. Those are things that make people happy. And this, what we have completely lost our way. We've completely lost our way, right? Because instead of focusing on things that are making us happy, we are actually doing the opposite. And then it is not a surprise that we find ourselves in the mess that we are, okay? So focus on the soul rather than the body. This is again from Rumi. He says, even if the body should lie amongst fragrance and musk, on death it will petrify and give out its stink. So scent not the body, but perfume the soul with musk. And what is that musk except the name of the glorious Lord? Okay. Again, when we are investing our time and energy and resources, we need to be intelligent about it, right? I think in the first few lectures, I talked about, when we're climbing the ladder of success. And I strongly believe that all of us should aim really high. We need to. We need to be the best at whatever we do. So whatever career you choose, give it your all, master it. But know that there is no, people say, well, I want to do what you do. Do you know how hard I work at what I do, right? But we want the success, but we don't want to put in the work. Because again, what the media and what society is telling us, that there is a hack, right? There is an easy way. How many times do we look and there's hack after hack, life hack and relationship hack. Let me tell you a huge big secret, there aren't any hacks. Anything worth doing takes time and effort. But here's the thing, that when you fall in love with the process, then you are happy in the process. If you choose something like a career and you choose it because it means something to you, it has meaning and purpose, you're doing it for a bigger vision than just yourself. Remember when God breathes his spirit into us, God did the same for everything, every one of us, right? What that means is that we are all connected. So me focusing on myself, we call it, one of the psychologists calls it the cocoon of self-absorption. Cocoon of self-absorption. In other words, I am so focused on myself, I have such tunnel vision that I cannot look at anything outside myself. And that is a recipe for anxiety and depression. Recipe for. In order to break out of this cocoon of self-absorption, we have to choose lives. We have to choose paths which are bigger than ourselves. Somebody once asked that, how do I forget my small problems in life? I said, by taking on big ones. Absolutely. Like if you are working for a cause that is greater than yourself, then the little things just don't matter. They don't matter. So, I see, well, everyone's younger than me these days, but I still see some young people who are still going to be choosing careers. Please don't go just after the money. Your risk is written for you. You will get that. But, and I'm not saying don't sell yourself short. If you're in negotiations, do your best, right? But choose things that are bigger than you. Choose things that are going to make a difference in this world. And that will make you happy, because no matter what career you choose, what path you choose, there will be challenges. Absolutely. You'll get nasty bosses, the office will be uncomfortable, you will have challenges. But when your vision is bigger than yourself, those challenges become easy. But when your focus is only yourself and the money and all of this, then everything becomes much, much bigger. Does that make sense? Okay. So, basically, what have we talked about today? I know it's been quite a bit theory, so I hope that and inshallah, these will be on YouTube. So if you want to catch up again, you can. The things that first of all, it's really important to have a good idea of who we are, to have an idea of our worth, because Allah has given us that. It is not a small thing that this amazing creator who is all powerful has decreed that we be on this planet and given us everything that we need for the job that we are here for. Okay. That's not a small thing. And this is what we need to remember when we feel kind of bad or not confident about ourselves, right? The things that we use to boost our own self-esteem have not worked, and doing more of it is not going to work. Okay. So we need to figure out what is it that makes people happy and do that. Invest your time and effort and energy into things that are going to keep you, which will make you have well-being both here and in the hereafter. So again, the idea is that we need to bring our relationship back to the focus with God and his laws. Because remember, the laws that he created, the guidance that he gave us, the love letter in the shape of the Quran that he sent us, it has literally all the tools. The whole toolbox for our own happiness is here. So what do? We need to remind ourselves that where we get our abilities from, and also have a very realistic picture that although he has granted us all of this, in front of him, we are still very, very minuscule. And he has granted the same thing to everyone. So we are no better than anyone else, okay? We really need to engage in social media very, very critically. This is essential for young people because we are spending so much time on, like, I guess TikTok is, I don't know if there's anything else newer than TikTok even. Sorry, Snapchat, okay. But the thing is that if we do it uncritically, it is impacting us. It's impacting our psyche, it's impacting our souls. And there's so much research that it is directly impacting our happiness, directly. There is something that used to be called Facebook depression, but now it's called digital depression, right? That the amount of time that you spend on social media consuming rather than creating or engaging is actually causing you to be unhappy. And also creating, what are you creating? Like, I don't know, I don't want to say too much here, but if you are creating, absolutely, but create something of value that people are going to benefit from, not just what you're eating and what you're wearing and where to spend your money. Because again, this is not making people happy, right? So we have a responsibility to do things which are and tomorrow, Charlie, we talk more about it, be a force for good in this world. Um, and again, for parents, we need to be really, really careful. And this is a long topic, which we don't have time to, cover today. But this idea of praise, junk praise that we, give our children, and just like junk food, it is not good for them, right? So we have to give them a realistic idea that they are very special. Why? Because they are God's creatures, absolutely, but they are not more special than others. When we raise children who are so special, whose every need is catered for, when the entire family kind of rotates and revolves around the tawaf around that child has to go out into the world, right? And we see examples of these two, a prince marrying a princess. That doesn't end well, right? Because we have to understand that true happiness comes from service, from giving, from contributing, not getting. And one of the biggest problems in relationship today is that two people get married both wanting to get. What can I get, right? What is in it for me?